if you go on Wikipedia and you look for active measures, you're going to find this quote that describes how the USSR tried to subvert the United States during the Cold War. The quote reads as follows: "In the view of the Russians, words and the exact meaning they convey matter more than in Western countries, where the importance of this notion still is taken lightly or even dismissed. When the success of the Russians in inhibiting Western society with the concept of political correctness, essentially based on new meanings given to words and on the power that can be derived from those alterations. To put to the latter explanation otherwise, how to cripple a nation by altering the meaning of its own language and by closely associating violence to as many words as possible in order to quote-unquote poison them. The process is invisible because it does not consist in creating new words carrying in themselves influence, but in altering instead the meaning of words that already exist. By converting nouns into adjectives or the reverse, it is possible indeed to sow discord that seems to erupt and grow naturally within a nation, while the unenlightened observer will perceive the process as a society that self-destructs or suicides, again entirely by its own." In other words, in USSR, the media, academia, and the publishing houses were directly controlled by the Communist Party, which means that they wouldn't be able to try to give certain words new meanings. They wouldn't be able to try and manipulate language to the way where a person that has been apprehended committing arson or burglary is just called a mostly peaceful protester. But in the West, all of these things, all of these controls didn't exist, so it was very easy for the language to be subverted. Take, for example, the word diversity. It's very difficult to find someone that will argue against it, because it stands to common sense that if you are presented with a problem, you will have a bigger advantage if you are also presented with a wide array of diverse solutions for that problem, and you can then pick the best solution possible in order to tackle that issue. And this is where, from diversity of thought, which is a good thing, comes just diversity of skin color, which again, most people will also agree, like you should not discriminate on hiring practices based on skin color. So here comes the Mott and Bailey argument, where they will say, well, are you for diversity? Yes, I am. Oh, then clearly you believe that America is inherently evil, it is racist, and that white people are creating a bad environment for everyone else. And if you disagree with this, then you're not for diversity. Now notice how these things don't have anything to do with one another, but because the language is being subverted, you can take something that used to mean something and just move the meaning to something else entirely. Another example would be equality. Most people are okay with the idea of equality under the law. It's very difficult to find someone that disagrees with it. No one would like to go back to a medieval system where you have one type of law for the aristocrats and another type of law for the peasants. However, what socialists will do is that they will try to create the idea that everyone should be equal, regardless if some people work harder and some people don't, or even if some people don't want to be equal. For example, I don't want to have a leadership position. I function a lot better when I just get told what to do. I don't like being the leader because the leader comes with a lot of responsibilities, and it's just not something that I prefer doing. I'd rather just be given an assignment and fall within that assignment, and when I get off work, I'm just relaxed and chill, and I don't have to worry about, when you're a leader and you have all these responsibilities hanging on top of your head. So what am I going with this? Well, with now understanding how easy it is to subvert language and take something that is supposed to mean something and push it into something else, you kind of get the idea of critical race theory. Now, if you look at critical race theory and you look at the etymology of the ism, what is the ism, right? You put the ism next to another word in order to create a brand new one. So for example, capitalism means the ideology of capital. Islamism, the ideology of Islam. Now you get where we're going. So racism is the ideology on race. It's when you view the world through the lens of race. That is what racism is. So when you have critical race theory, just remove the critical and there you go. Now, maybe, you're not going to understand really what I want to go with here. And you might think that I'm full of shit. So I'll just let a person that is trained in order to explain to others about critical race theory do it for me.
All white people are racist. So I put this up because I really want any white person in the room to know up front that this is what we're dealing with, that it's not going to be this coddling of white tears and what that looks like. We're not going to discuss, maybe some of us have worked it out. No, you're always going to be racist, actually. So even when you're on your path to trying to figure out how to be a better human being, because I believe that white people are born into not being human, like that actually, instead of people of color and Black folks being dehumanized, that actually everyone is dehumanized off rip within white supremacy, that y'all are born into a life to not be human, and that's what y'all are taught to do, to be demons. So in this particular way, white people are all racist. So I just want y'all to know that up front.
Now, I know what you're going to say, and you're probably going to be like, well, hold on a little bit, V. I went to my university, I went to my place of business, and we had certain programs that promoted diversity and anti-racism, but they didn't say anything like that. Well, if that's the case, then that's fine, because that's not what we're going to be talking about. You see, when the US president decided to attack critical race theory, he considered it as being an ideology which needs to have one of the following. Either an ideology that considers America to be inherently racist and evil, or considers any race to be evil or to be worse than other races. So even if you were to have like some national socialist preaching some white supremacy and saying that non-whites are inferior or anything similar, that would also fall under the critical race theory and it would be banned. So, you're safe if your ideology that you're teaching at a university doesn't have any of these two things. And why would you even want an ideology that believes that America is evil to get money from America? Like, how can you sleep at night knowing that those evil people, those evil taxpayers are funding and they're putting bread on your table? That's blood money, right? I mean, you need to find a more decent source of income like Qatar or China. So if you look at the history of critical race theory and the way you can explain it, and I think like this applies to what they consider to be woke, when the revolution in the United States didn't happen, and I'm talking about the Marxist revolution, right? The workers did not rise up, and this caused a lot of disenfranchised Marxists to be really upset. Now, if you are aware of Marxists, they come in different shapes and sizes. Like some are anarcho-syndicalists, others can be tankies. They come in different flavors, if you will. And this time, most of them united. And they tried to figure out a new way of pushing socialism and Marxism in a country that didn't want it economically. And what they thought about doing was to use race as a vehicle in order to push this ideology. So instead of fighting based on class, they tried to use race now as a way of dividing people and making sure that people start struggling with each other, and eventually people are going to rise up. And they failed, because the civil rights movement in the United States didn't end in the way that people like Malcolm X wanted, with violence, but it ended in the way that Dr. Luther King wanted. And as such, black people managed to gain civil rights, which is a good thing, right? And they managed to do it in a peaceful, democratic way without starting a communist uprising. And this critical race theory was pushed to the margins of society. It managed to find refuge in academia. It managed to find refuge in a couple of fringe newspapers. But overall, it was defeated until the invention of social media. Because now, with social media, people could organize and without leaving their homes, like from the comfort of their own bedroom, could try and get other people fired or sacked from a job and do activism that wasn't possible in doing before. And a lot of corporations also found out that this type of ideology is actually very good at dividing people. So you have corporations using quote-unquote diversity, not what you think of, like just hiring different people, but like the ideology of, this race is evil, America is bad, in order to prevent people from unionizing. Because it's very difficult to unionize against Amazon when you think that your coworker is out to get you. And he is part of this faction of people that are working constantly in order to keep you down. So this is why you now have this critical race theory back into discussion. And this is why the US government is now fighting in order to combat it. Because it's a revolutionary ideology. It doesn't like the United States government, to the point where they're not talking about reforming the US government. They're talking about burning it down, about abolishing it. So this is why you have the US president coming up and saying, no, like during our administration, no more US government entity is going to have critical race theory. We're not going to use taxpayer money in order to fund this shit. If you want it, do it with the private sector. No one is stopping you from creating like your private university and teaching that there. You're free to do so. It's a free country, but like you're not going to use the taxpayer money in order to create a violent revolution against the taxpayer. I think it makes sense. I don't see it as a way of infringing someone's liberty. I'm really not that comfortable though, to be honest. Like I'm not very happy that it has come to this. Like normally it should have been dealt with without the need of the president to step in. However, when I think about it, what the left has done with this ideology by indoctrinating people into thinking that America is evil and some races are better than others, and taught them to be race warriors and revolutionaries, they realize that in the democratic space they cannot win. Like everywhere there is a debate, everywhere where people can talk, they will fail, which is why you see mass censorship on the internet, which is why you see that most of the newspapers now have their forums disabled, which is why you see that when people speak out, they get fired or consequences happen to them. So really, every single non-democratic institution has been co-opted by this ideology, from video games to movies to the mainstream media. Like even in the New York Times, left-leaning authors have been sacked by people more extreme, more further to the left than them, because they have managed to completely dominate the culture. And you have people like Vosh on YouTube, also say, yeah, we need to get our boys into all of these groups. We need to get more people, more people on our side to get them here and there and blah, blah, blah. Because that's how they're thinking. Like they're looking at this as a game to be won. And this is why they're livid that the US president is nominating another judge on the Supreme Court. If you look at it, the judges like Kavanaugh, they're in the center. I mean, look at the decision they've been making. They're not like hardcore right-wingers. They even overthrew Trump on a couple of decisions. They do not seem to me as being like far-right radicals. They are in the center. The left is upset that they cannot get more people that are far-left radicals in the Supreme Court. That's why they're upset about it. Because they view it as a lost opportunity. The Supreme Court is not a democratic institution. The people there are not held accountable to the public. Once they get in, they can decide whatever they want, and there is no accountability for them. And that's why you see prosecutors and DAs that refuse to convict leftist activists, because they are part of that system. They are part of that ideology. And every single thing that is not democratic seems to be co-opted by these people, right? So I guess it has to come to this. I guess it has to come to the US president and say, look, if you want to do that, do it with your cash. Don't do it with the American government money. And by the way, now he's saying that if you're a company who wants to work with the government, so you're a government contractor, which is a very lucrative business. I mean, it's great if you have a private company that gets to work with the government. One of the conditions is that you do not preach this critical race theory. And this is major because it's going to affect universities. It's going to affect Google. It's going to affect social media. I mean, if Google wants to do any type of contract with the US government now, they're going to make sure that, well, we don't preach critical race theory here. And again, like critical race theory means that you do not believe that America is inherently evil, and you do not believe that one race or any other one is superior or evil compared to other. Like that's what it means. All right? If you have any other ideology, like you wanna have an ideology where you explain why it's good to hire a diverse group of people and why it's good to hire non-whites, it's fine. Like it doesn't fall under this category. Only those two things that I mentioned before fall under this category. So technically, even left-leaning people should be okay with it, because the same way that it's used against, the people that say whites are evil can also be used against other people that do not like non-whites. You can use the same act. So, but of course they're not happy with this, because they understand, that this is the seat of their power. This is exactly where they drag power from, which is the taxpayer money. I have looked at DC Comics lately, and there was this comic book called Superman Against the Klan, the remake. Now, the original Superman Against the Klan is an all-time classic, because it talks about how there were these investigators that looked into the Klan, and when they wanted to go to the radio, when they wanted to go to mainstream media publications and give the information of what they found out, no one had the courage to allow them to speak. So they went to DC Comics, and then they injected some of the information they found out in order to create the way the Klan is. And that's when it sparked the conversation. That's when people started looking more into it, and by the language they were using, they started getting more into their ideology, and that's how the Klan got exposed, and people started resisting them and being against them, which is a really interesting piece of history, right? But now they remade this, and the remake is more like, oh look, well, the Klan doesn't like immigrants, and Donald Trump doesn't like immigrants. He's part of the Klan. Like that is the new comic. And I'm looking through this, and it's not really about Superman. It's about this Chinese girl that's an immigrant, and I guess like her relationship with Superman, who's also a Kryptonian, and he never fit in with the Earth because he's so different. And I'm thinking like, wow, like they really don't get Superman, because Superman isn't Supergirl, right? Like he's Clark Kent. He grew up on a farm. He learned from his parents about truth, justice, and the American way. Supergirl is different. Like she doesn't fit in. She's an actual immigrant because she saw Krypton before it exploded. She knew people from there, right? And my point is that when you look at the price of the comic, it's $10. And I'm like, holy shit, who's going to buy this for $10? That's a lot of money, isn't it? $10? Like if I was a kid now and I had $10, I would rather buy a DLC for a game. I would buy some loot boxes on Overwatch. Why would I spend $10? Right? But when you look at the author and the person that's creating this garbage, he doesn't want to sell it to the public. And I was like mind-boggling. Like, what do you mean you don't want to sell your comic? No. He wants to sell it to libraries. He wants to sell it to schools. Like, he is banking on the fact that there are other people in those places that are woke, as he is, and they are just going to order like hundreds or thousands of these issues, and that's how they're going to make money for DC, right? So it's all about bypassing the free market, bypassing the consumer, bypassing anything that has to do with democracy, and go for that sweet, sweet taxpayer money. That's literally what this ideology is about. Getting people placed into positions of power that get to make a lot of wealth at your expense. That's literally it. They're not here to dismantle any position of power. They are here to create new positions of power. Again, a diversity officer at one of these universities that a lot of people are complaining that they cannot afford to pay the loan, the student loan, they make anywhere between $100,000 to $300,000 a year. Like, why is this justified? How is it possible that a person that is just there to say hire more people of color is paid such a ridiculous amount of cash? Why is this acceptable? And is that really the same what they're doing, right? Like they want to use taxpayer money in order to fund their little leftist projects, their little leftist activist things. And I don't think it's okay. Like if you ask the public, if you poll the public, I don't think they're going to be fine with it. But again, like they want to avoid democracy altogether. They're not about polling. They're not about asking. They're not democratic at all. They just want to enforce it upon the people. So this is an interesting move, and it's interesting because it also affects the U.S. government. Like it's a two-way street. Doing trade deals is not, how should I say, beneficial just for one party. If the U.S. government, let's say, would need a tech company to do something for them, but like literally all of the tech companies are having critical race theory, then it's going to be very difficult for the U.S. government to work with someone. But the more I think about it, like they're going to probably find someone from Poland or, from one of the Eastern European countries that are more resistant to this bullshit because they've been under the Iron Curtain and they know what this nonsense is about. So it might even come to that. Like, if it's going to actually, get Trump reelected, and let's say in 4 more years, and all of the Silicon Valley companies are going to be like, nope, we're just going to have critical race theory and we're not going to work with the U.S. government, then I predict that you are going to see East European tech companies starting to earn a lot of cash because they're hired and they're working with the U.S. government. That would be an interesting thing. In the beginning, it will probably not be really good because these companies won't be as powerful or as talented as Silicon Valley. But as time moves on and they're going to get a lot of money and start developing, yeah, I'm pretty sure, you are going to see companies from Poland that are going to work with the United States government. Why not? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.